Six Flags is the largest amusement park chain in North America. The name Six Flags can make people think of so many different things. You might think of Mr. Six, goofy advertisements, DC-themed roller coasters, or you might think of some parks like Six Flags Magic Mountain or Six Flags Great Adventure. However, most people fail to think about some of the smaller parks in the chain like Great Escape, Frontier City, Luron, Six Flags America, Six Flags St. Louis, and Six Flags Darien Lake. These parks all have a lot of potential for a number of different reasons. I know the list goes beyond those parks, but I think these are the most neglected parks in the chain. I think all of these parks can be improved upon if Six Flags takes the right course of action. I actually sort of like what Six Flags has done with these parks opposed to what we've seen from Cedar Fair with their small parks. But I think a few small adjustments would greatly benefit all of these parks. All of these parks have a lot of room for growth since most of them revolve around big population centers. These parks have all had better days, so I think with some TLC, these parks could be back to being big money makers for the chain, and Six Flags could squeeze out as much as they can out of these parks. I recently did a similar video for Cedar Fair's small park, so feel free to go check that out. Before watching this video, there should be a link in the iBox up above. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this coming soon. I'm looking at possibly doing some more in-depth videos like this for each park, so make sure to do those things so I'll be encouraged by the results, so I'll be more likely to make those kind of videos. Now with all that being said, let's jump right into today's video. First, I'm going to take a look at the history of some of these parks and how they got to this point and how they got to the bottom of the chain. Now for Six Flags Darien Lake and Frontier City, they were just recently acquired by Six Flags a couple seasons back from Premier Parks who operated them. With these parks, Six Flags is an operating lease, which means they don't fully own the park, but they pretty much run any day-to-day operations that the parks perform. These parks are still very new to the chain, they haven't been there for a while, so they haven't really had any significant investments made in them. However, both these parks used to be a part of the chain, but they were sold off in 2007, and neither park really received any significant investments after the turn of the century, during the time that Six Flags owned them. Moving on to Great Escape, Great Escape was actually acquired by Premier Parks in 1996, who eventually became Six Flags, and they remained with the chain ever since. Great Escape hasn't really received any significant investment other than the lodge that was built directly next to the park. They haven't received a ground-up roller coaster in ages, so it's safe to say this park is fairly neglected by the chain. Moving on to Luron in Montreal, Canada. Luron's actually owned by the city of Montreal and is operated by Six Flags similarly to Frontier City and Darien Lake, where Six Flags does not have full ownership over the park. They acquired operating rights in 2001, and they're actually given some decent additions with Goliath and a Batman clone. And they've actually gotten some decent investments in the past few years with rides like Titan and the park's new for 2021 edition, Vipere. This park has seemed to have done a little better than some of the other parks in this video. Moving on to Six Flags St. Louis. Six Flags St. Louis was built by Six Flags in 1971 and remained with the name Six Flags over Mid-America until 1996, where it had his name changed to Six Flags St. Louis. This park was given some decent additions throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, but as of late, they haven't really gotten anything that significant. Their last coaster was a relocated Boomerang in 2013, so it's been a while. Finally, Six Flags America in 1992 was purchased by Premier Parks and remained with them when they transitioned to Six Flags. This park actually got loaded with roller coasters in the 90s, and they got actually 3 roller coasters in 1999. And the next year they managed to get Ride of Steel, which is their intimate mega coaster. They actually had a total of 6 roller coasters added from 1998 to 2001, but since then they haven't really gotten too much. They've gotten a couple relocations with Apocalypse, now Firebird, and Raging Cajun. This park has struggled to get any good additions over the past decade or so, and it's really sad to see. So now that I've given a good amount of background information for each of these parks, they all kind of have a similar history where they're doing okay or good in the 90s or early 2000s, but since then they've struggled. With some of these parks, I'm not really sure if Six Flags has really figured out what they want to use them for. I think with parks like Frontier City and Great Escape, they figured out that they're good as small family parks and they don't really need any big investments, which is okay. They work well for the chain and it gets the chain more money. But for the rest of the parks, they all actually have decent sized cities within a decent range to draw from. So I feel like Six Flags need to really rethink their plans for some of these parks. Take Six Flags America, for example. This park is situated in between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and this park seems to struggle with attendance. I know that this area of the country is very competitive for theme parks and amusement parks, but I think Six Flags should really consider investing in this park because there's still plenty of room for growth. In order to solve these problems, I think Six Flags needs to take a look at their addition strategy. Six Flags prides themselves on trying to give each park a new ride every year, or at least they say so. But Six Flags is good at making sure each park gets frequent additions, even if they're good or bad. Some of these parks have actually gotten some nice thrill rides over the last few years, but that's not going to cut it. None of these parks, other than Darien Lake getting Tantrum from their previous operator, have gotten a new ground-up coaster in a long time. That is where I think the strategy is flawed, because Six Flags focuses on quantity over quality of the additions that they give some of these parks. I do like that Six Flags is giving these parks good additions from time to time, because Cedar Fair doesn't really give their smaller parks much of anything, even in terms of flat rides and other small additions. However, Six Flags will have to start looking to invest in smaller thrill coasters for some of these parks to help boost their attendance. Obviously, Six Flags is struggling a bit financially as of now due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so this obviously isn't a great time to take some risky investments. Maybe a little ways down the road we could start seeing Six Flags look to invest in some of the smaller parks. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I don't think the park should be getting new roller coasters every single year or anything like that. I think they should just be getting new roller coasters every so often, not going crazy, because that's not going to improve these parks because they just don't have the structure for that right now. Now, I'm going to go park by park and explain what I think they can do to improve on the park in the relative near future. First, I'm going to group Great Escape and Frontier City into one sitting because both of these parks have a similar plan in my eyes. I wouldn't expect to see any major investments in either of these parks anytime soon, and there's no good reason to invest majorly in either of these parks. Now, what I would like to see is Six Flags expand on the flat ride collections at these parks. These parks are family parks like I mentioned, so there's not a good reason to not invest for flat rides in these parks if they're going to add rides to these parks every single year like Six Flags has been doing in the past. I also wouldn't mind seeing a family coaster at either one of these parks, maybe from Zamperla, or maybe in a nice like Wild Mouse or something would be cool. Maybe a launch coaster could work as well, but a nice family coaster wouldn't hurt either of these parks whatsoever. Next up is Luron, and this park is definitely a bit more interesting than some of the other parks. They don't have the Six Flags branding like Darien Lake, St. Louis, and Six Flags America has. So I'm honestly not too convinced that this park is going to get any major investment, but if they were to, I'd probably recommend RMCing Monster. That would give the park another huge headlining attraction and probably would put this park on more people's radars, but they have been doing a nice job with their flat ride additions over the past couple of years, and this park definitely seems to be heading in the right direction with the repair. Hopefully they'll be able to fix that right up for this park so it won't hurt people, but overall I do think Six Flags is on the right track with this park. Next up, we'll talk about Six Flags Darien Lake. They already gave this park a Skyscreamer, which I thought was a really good addition. I'd also like to see some more flat rides come to this park. I think the flat ride collection at this park is kind of weak. I also think a Raptor would work really well here. It'd be so unique to the area. I think it'd also be a great addition. I think a Free Spin could work here as well. Another very unique ride to the area. Also, another thing I'd like to see is a full conversion of Predator, whether that be from GCI or RMC. I know that GCI is doing some work with the Titan track on this coaster, but I really like to see a full redo of this coaster because I don't really think that there's much really good about it as it is. So just get it out of here. But overall, whatever happens to this park is completely up to Six Flags. We don't really know what they have planned for the park since they've only been running it for a couple of years now. Moving on to Six Flags America. This park already has a very solid coaster lineup. They already have a star attraction, you could argue, with Superman Ride of Steel, so they could be looking for more of a contrast to that ride. I think a Raptor would work great here. An SNS air launch coaster could be really good for this park. I also think RMC Roar would not be a bad option whatsoever. That could really help boost their lineup as well. Again, I think a Free Spin would also be a solid fit. Wouldn't be phenomenal, but I think it would work. I also like how they've been expanding their flat ride collection over the last few years. That's a really good thing to see. And they've really been upgrading this park as a whole. They've added some new security features to it. They've updated the DC area. So they're taking some steps in the right direction with this park. Investing in the water park wouldn't even be a bad option either. But I think if Six Flags gave this park one more thrill coaster, they'd be in really good shape for the future, especially with the giant population center that they have near the park. So my plan for them would actually be to keep upgrading the park, give them one more thrill coaster, and boom, you might have a really solid park on your hands. Finally, we have Six Flags St. Louis, and I definitely think this park has a lot of potential compared to some of the other parks that I mentioned in this video. But I think since this park lacks a true hypercoaster, a Chance GTX Hyper, even though those aren't really hypercoasters, could work really well here with its compact layout and large amount of airtime that it provides during the ride experience. I also think a smaller new Vekoma would be great for this park as well. I think it's better to go for an unconventional route for this park because I think it's got a lot of potential. If they invest with the right ride, it could be really good. People have thrown around the idea of RMCing Boss. I've heard rumors that the Titan track could be put on that coaster, so that could work as well. I've heard it's already a fairly solid ride on its own, so the Titan track could make it a really solid coaster as well. But if I did have to choose one park to get invested the most in, it would probably be Six Flags St. Louis. Their lineup is already pretty solid, and the park is a pretty good setting. They've actually been upgrading the park a lot over the last couple of years. That new entrance sign looks so cool. And I think if Six Flags puts the right investments into this park, it could be a very solid park in the future and can compete with some of the parks higher than it in the chain currently. I actually mentioned a lot of the same rides over and over again for a lot of these parks, and that's why I think Six Flags could really look into doing some bulk investments with rides like a Chance GTX Hyper, Raptors, 4D Free Spins, which they already have been doing, and possibly some new Vekomas if the price is right. I also think bulk investing in some Zamperillas wouldn't be the worst thing ever for some family rides and some thrill rides, so that's also on the table as well. But overall, once Six Flags recovers from the pandemic, I think they could definitely have a good future ahead of them with some of these smaller parks. Some of these parks have some serious potential to become real competitors in the industry if Six Flags invests in them correctly. I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that these parks have a lot of potential? Do you think some of these parks should be invested in over others? Or do you think these parks should stay the way they are and not get really any investments for the future? Make sure to leave all those thoughts down in the comments below. I'll gladly read them. Just please be respectful of me and the other people in the comments and all will be good. This video has been on the longer side, so if you're still here, I really appreciate you guys for making it all the way through the video. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this coming soon. But with all that being said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.